Hello there. My name's Nevin, and I'd like to tell you a story. This one's called Another Round. This story is dedicated to anyone who's ever bought me a drink. In the summer of 2024, I found myself in Lacoste, France. It was a small mountain village full of amiable natives and seasonal tourists, but controlled almost completely, in one way or another, by a satellite campus of the Savannah College of Art and Design. It was this university that brought me there. A rising senior with little left to do and yet much left to worry about, I tasked myself that summer with the ultimate form of escape. I left the country for the first time and flew the 10 hours to France alone. Once there, I was surrounded by 130 or so students from my same school, very few of whom I had ever met. I was instantly endeared by the town. It seemed to my American eyes to be the perfect picture of European life. Tight social groups, walkable activities, good conversation, and even better food. There was a purpose to my life there, and that purpose was life. No more than 48 hours into my time in Lacoste did I catch on to the fact that while the French rose late and kept their days laden with deliberate silence, their nights were loud and bright. The root of this revelry soon became clear. As much as the people of Lacoste love good food, they loved good drinks twice as much. I don't say that to primitivize another culture, only to tell it from my perspective, that of a young American who'd never touched alcohol in his life. This was, of course, due to my traditional Christian parents. Neither of them ever drank, not even at weddings. I suppose at some point they each reflected on their family lines, my mother's plagued by addiction and my father's by poor health, and decided their joint family was better off without the elixir that famously brought both. The French, though, seemed more at peace with the dangerous edges of life. They were able to see plainly the myth that was control. It was this craving for an unburdened existence that drew me, along with two of my colleagues, one from Puerto Rico and one from India, to the only bar in town on that second night. The problem arose immediately. I had no idea what I wanted. Something local, sure, but something good. For all I knew, my bloodline had developed intolerance, and that first sip would kill me flat out. It was then and there, sitting in an ancient, cavernous bar, reviewing a menu of beverages I'd never tasted, written in a language I didn't know, that I became aware of a truth behind a technique that I'd been using my entire life. I went after my friends, told the bartender I'd have what they were having, and sat down aglow with realization. Maybe I never had to decide. I hated the drink. It was a local rosé, cheap and rich but practically flavorless to the uninitiated. I drank the whole glass. My friends chastised my distaste, but even in the face of displeasure, I felt connected. All three of us came from different places, different languages, and were set loose in a land that belonged to none of us. One flavor, three mouths, three different reactions. Maybe we toasted, "You are what you eat," and maybe, in that moment, we were the same. Enlightened by its ease and invigorated by its surprise, I continued using my ordering technique to great success. With friends, with family, with dates or potential dates. Whoever I found myself with, I drank the same thing they did. Rosé, mojito, whiskey coke, Aperol spritz, hot chocolate, peppermint latte, mocha latte. I kept it up for months and months undeterred. Each time, I learned. Something about the person, sure. What they like in a drink, of course. But also, their reactions to my ordering the same thing, the tiniest tilt of their head at my implicit endorsement of something they may well have picked at random. It began to feel journalistic in nature, but also paradoxically intimate. Two people at a table somewhere, drinking the same drink, thinking their separate thoughts, and only I know it's a game. These people were my unwitting guides through the realms of alcohol and coffee, the clueless sages assisting me with my most childish vice, indecision. Childish isn't the word for it. Children aren't indecisive. They move with perfect self-assurance, absolute conviction. They have a sense of inherent justice only deterred by quote-unquote corrections rained down on them by their parents, teachers, older siblings. They know on some level that they exist transitively, that even if, especially if, they do everything right, they will be thrust into a life they are naturally unprepared for. And so they look to those who already live this life, and they pretend. Imitation is not a sacred art because it resolves indecisive panic in the cafe line, or even because it brings a greater degree of connection between participants. It is a sacred art because it is integral to our personhood. To live fully is to acknowledge those who have lived and those who live alongside you, and to place yourself in their context. In the early stages, this looks like duplication. Children take on the values of their parents, artists take on the styles of their mentors. Systems persist. And this is understood to be a good thing. Imitation is the highest form of flattery, so they say. But with time comes the awakening of one's presence in the routine of social replication, and the desire to leave that routine behind. Young people rebel against their parents, leave home, find communities elsewhere. We choose role models worthy of imitation and consider all non-deliberate similarities at best incidental and at worst problematic. The fiction tells us we are not the fruits of our circumstances, that we are hydroponic humans grown out of oblivion. Many people, especially Americans, spend the entirety of their youth in a shouting match against the world to be acknowledged as distinct. To these people, the worst outcome they can imagine is being lumped in with a group. They prize their persona, their independence, their quote-unquote brand. They believe that somehow this recognition will staunch the bleeding from the wound where they severed themselves from the world. They forget that they too are born from duplication, one cell at a time. Do as I say, not as I do, is a common rebuke of children who deftly mimic their parents. It is a simple and catchy nod to the gulf between actions a child is capable of and the actions they can understand the motivations of. It is also an attempt by parents to sculpt the places and times in which their children will become them. It's only natural for a parent to want better for their child. To recognize their mistakes and caution the next generation against them is among the most basic instincts of humanity. But some patterns seem bound to repeat. Sometimes we have to aim higher than ourselves. My household, helmed by my aforementioned traditional Christian parents, strove not for personal imitation but for individualism, corralled by the biblical calling towards being Christ-like. Rather than endorse any interpersonal replication, my parents pointed us towards a set of ideals outlined in an ancient text. Unsurprisingly, it was effective. And the Bible gives indicators that this will be the case. God maintains divine fatherhood over his followers, seen as his children. These children, canonically made in his image, are naturally inclined to seek God because long ago they lived alongside him until they incurred his wrath through mortal error. When framed this way, it seems there is no easier task. The imitation of Christ is a task we are not only called to do, but designed to do, crafted by the same hand who crafted Christ himself. But as the Bible, and anyone who's earnestly attempted to follow it, will tell you, it's not just hard, it's impossible. This is another crux of imitation as an art. It is impossible. No restored painting will ever have the improvisational chaos of the original because the restorer already knows what they're supposed to paint. No student will ever replicate their mentor's style because the mentor has years of experience the student lacks. No son will ever become his father because half of him is his mother. And those two medium-hot mocha lattes poured within minutes of each other and carried carefully to the lawn chairs where we sat and talked for hours, despite being in identical cups, made with identical ingredients, and costing identical amounts, were not the same. And as her green eyes met mine, we understood this is never an error. It is a blessing. Our understood failures, our inherent flaws, are the gravitational pull that forces us out of the prison of assimilation to our past. Our personalities, constructed or discovered, are the lenses through which our every venture is refracted. Everything we attempt will land somewhere between who we want to be and who we are. Those who want to be great artists imitate great artists, and their inescapable humanity marries this pursuit to mold them into who they will become. Imperfect imitation is what separates men from mirrors. Life is the game of choosing the right paragon to mimic. It is the game of knowing when to start, when to keep going, and how. It is the game of knowing when to stop. By the end of my 8 weeks in Lacoste, I had sampled no shortage of drinks, keeping careful track of which one belonged to which one of my companions. I never developed much in the way of taste, but I had a few data points to work with, and before I left, I was ordering for myself, albeit still in English. Returning to my home in the United States, where the drinking age is 21, I suddenly found myself underage again, unable to utilize my newfound knowledge. This product of imitation sat dormant within me, unique and studied. It was a ticking reminder of the joy I felt during my escape abroad, a particular joy now inaccessible to me for myriad reasons. It might have been easy to watch this experience catalyze into memory and despair, but I knew the space it occupied within me and the shape that its absence would leave. I knew my joy was unbound by the particulars of the experiment I had performed with my friends, and most of all, I knew how to perform it again. It feels worth mentioning to my more curious readers that in the midst of all this sampling, I did develop preferences. For coffee, I like what my local cafe calls the Mexican mocha, a dark chocolate whole milk mocha latte with cinnamon and habanero mixed into it. And for spirits, I like straight Captain Morgan original spiced rum, one polite shot at a time. Thanks for listening. Once again, I'm Nevin, and this has been another round. I'll see you soon.